Hello, welcome to another edition of Convict Inc. I'm your host, Robert Rosso. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so. If you like this video, please share it. And please like the video. That's what I was trying to say. Anyway, all right. So Building 63 inside of the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. I've talked about this in other videos, but I'm going to go ahead and pretend like this is the first time ever. Okay, so within the walls of Leavenworth, if you guys haven't seen Leavenworth, Google it. It's the front of the building, which is part of the prison housing units. And then there's 35-foot red brick walls, like thick enough, wide enough to drive a VW bug around. It's huge. Within those walls, there's lots of things, including warehouses, buildings on the outside. You've got the special housing unit, which is like a county jail within the prison. But there's a place called Building 63. I think there's Building 62 also. 63 is one of the oldest housing units. The Bird Mound of Alcatraz, which is alleged to have stayed there. People say it was in 62, but whatever. When I got there, it was closed. These are some of the oldest special housing units, possibly the oldest units in the prison when the prison was first opened, but for sure it's the oldest special housing units. And the correctional officers in Leavenworth can correct me in the comment section because I know you guys are watching. Shout out to you. So I got there in September 1998, fresh life sentence. Building 63 was closed down. A couple months later, there was a trial involving members of the Aryan Brotherhood. At the time, all of them were slammed down, meaning they were in special management units, Marion ADX, or control management units, whatever they're called, special SMU programs, so it would be SMU, I believe. Anyway, McElhaney, Big Mac, was the guy who was going to trial. And what they did was, the ABs used to use trials as places to hold meetings, catch up with the fellows, hang out with each other. So Big Mac, whatever, represented himself, and what he did was he called all his bros back as witnesses so they can get together and have meetings, whatever. The SHU was not equipped to handle so many members of the brand. I think at first they tried, but what they ultimately did was they just opened up a few of the cells in Building 63, and they let them all stay together. And I mean, these guys were all together. I don't know the administration's call who did this. It was Warden Booker, I believe. You put a bunch of gang members that are in different prisons that have to discuss different businesses, a different kind of illegal business. I don't know if it was a great idea to put them together, but hey, that's a whole different story. And they fixed that the second time around. That is on the second trial. Anyway, so that was the first I was aware that anybody was housed in Building 63, was when there was like 9 active members of the brand, and then some associates, affiliates, whatever, I believe. And again, so these cells, they had 3 bunk beds in them, huge cells. So 5 people can do burpees in these cells at one time. That's how big these cells are. I know because there was 5 of us in the cell that did it before. I was in 63 years later, which I'm going to talk about today. When they decided to bring all the prisoners from the District of Columbia into the feds, they brought 400 into Leavenworth pretty much overnight. The warden at the time's name was Mickey Ray. I heard he's since passed on. Sorry to hear about that. Family members and friends of Mickey Ray. What he did was he had a policy that was kind of not really well thought out. If he wanted to keep you in the SHU 18 months, he did. So he started this 18-month SHU program stuff. And what it did was it caused a lot of extra overcrowding in the SHUs, clogged up. Then he started just throwing 3 people and 2 people cells. That is, there's only 2 beds at the time in the special housing unit or the SHU. And he started putting 3, even 4 people in one cell as it got overcrowded. If he didn't like you, he put you on an 18-month SHU program. He tried to take away radios, tobacco, whatever. The staff did not cooperate with him so well. Usually the executive staff had a really hard time with the regular staff that worked at Leavenworth. A lot of these guys are generational correctional officers, been there a long time. They're a clique within themselves. They treat outside correctional officers a little different. If they're not from there, if you're not generational, well, I would say generational, but generational helps. But if you're not from there, then you're not in with the in crowd. That's just the way they do it, or we're doing it back in those days. Anyway, when the SHU got overcrowded and then they put all the DC prisoners in, Mickey Ray decided to open up Building 63. He also decided to put 3 bunks in the special housing unit, which created a big mess as well. So at the time, all the dirty white boys, which included myself, and some associates of ours were locked down. We were going to be transferred due to gang issues with the arms and others. We were on A range in the special housing unit when one day they told us to pack all our stuff, that we were moving over to Building 63. Now, we had known that Building 63 was going to come open. We were told that they were going to put protective custody cases in there. There is a PC unit, or protective custody unit, in Leavenworth at that time known as the doghouse. The doghouse was the only cell block left in its original state, or as close to it as possible. It was 5 tiers tall. They did not have central heating or air inside. The windows were broken. There was birds flying around. It was miserable in there. And they intentionally did that to the protective custody cases. I remember Warden Booker when I first got to Leavenworth. And big guy, huge black guy, he smoked big, long cigars. Got to be close to 400 pounds. And I'm not trying to say he was obese. He was huge and huge. He was big. I remember he kind of waddled down the aisle real slow, calm, cool as can be. And he said he wasn't taking no questions. And he said straight out, if you do dope, there's China White up in A3. There's tar in B block. B lower, B uppers, tar all around and get your marijuana. If you're into boys, there's a lot of boys here, you can do that. Just pay your bills, fellas. Pay your bills, because I don't want to be handling your business. Meaning, a lot of guys would run up a bunch of big tabs, couldn't pay their bills, and then they go check in, and that involved getting staff, and that meant that staff had to get involved. You had a PC up, they threw you in Building 63, and they had an 18-month policy there. That was kind of used as a deterrent, not so guys wouldn't PC up. They'd rather have a guy go beat the hell out of one another and go to the SHU than go to PC up, at least at that time. So we were told that the D block was getting overcrowded and they were going to open up 63 for that purpose, to put a bunch of check-ins or protective custody cases, child molesters, whatever. So imagine our surprise when they came and just told the dirty white boys and the dirty white boys alone that we were going to go to go to Unit 63. Again, the special housing unit where we were is a county jail within the prison. We had to walk out of there, walk into the main building, walk out the side door by the kitchen, and then if you walk back, I think it was a laundry was back there, that was the front entrance of Building 63. And sure enough, when we got there, we realized there was a bunch of protective custody cases and the dirty white boys, and we were not happy. Why did they put us in basically a PC block? That set the tone for how we were going to act for the next months to come. I have talked about throwing feces on CO Reed. I've talked about getting in fights with the SORT team. That was in the SHU, but in 63, feces was thrown on CO Reed. That was over contraband. He didn't give us our contraband. COs used to bring us contraband. Guys on the compound, we'd send notes to the compound to guys that were friendly towards us and say, hey, can you get us a package, blah, blah. They'd get a bag, a brown bag, and send it full of tobacco. Now, the COs would take a portion of it to feed their rats, they would say, to give to their guys, their orderlies, whatever. So that was part of the game. If we were going to get 3 bags of coffee, 1 was going to be peeled. If we were getting 4 cartons of Bugler cigarettes, 1 was going to be gone, and that went to the rats, the orderlies, whatever the COs wanted to do with it. As part of the tax for bringing it in. That's how it worked. The first day we got into Building 63, so there was 3 cells of us. So I think there was 4 in 1. So there was about 12 of us and a few 12 members of the Dirty White Boys and a few associates. We, again, 3 bunk beds, so I mean 6 people per cell. We would not allow, we tried not to allow more than 4, but we would not allow 6 ever. Nobody would. So up in the first cell was TC Head Youngster, and Weasel. In the cell I was in, it was me, Dusty, White, and Jeremy Idis. And sometimes there was a guy named Cub. I told you about us beating Cub up. And there was a guy named Sean, who was a dirty white boy who we beat up, and he dropped out and PC'd up across in the cell straight across from us. And this story I'm going to tell you about kind of goes into what happened with Sean, what Sean did too. Directly next door to us was No-No's Billy. No-No's Billy. Oh, I'm drawing a blank now. Who else was over there? There's 2 more. I just totally went blank on that one. We actually dug the cinder blocks between our walls out, so we were able to pass. We were going to actually dig a few cinder blocks out so we can go back and forth between these cells. And the COs really didn't care what we did. It was hot. It was over 100 degrees that summer. These are brick buildings, so it holds heat. They did not have air conditions. They put big fans in front of our cells. And that wasn't in front of every cell. So one night they would rotate. So one night this person would get it, when we'd get it, and back and forth. It was miserable. It was freaking miserable. We stayed sweating, hotter than hell. It was horrible. All we did in there was try to stay as drunk and high as possible. We got dope in there, I think, once. I used to get Tylenol 3s, and I used to hoard them and then get high off of them. We also got gabapentin and baclofen. One's kind of a seizure medication slash nerve relaxer. The other one is a muscle relaxer. You mix those 2 together, and it's kind of like an acid trip, because we were taking so many. We were taking 15 baclofens and 15 Orans at a time. So we were just trying to stay as high as possible. Had wine brewing at all times. I remember the first day that we got there. Now, when we left the shoe, they stripped us. They went through all our property. And let me tell you, we still managed to get a bunch of contraband in. And one of them included a kicker. And the kicker is basically it replaces yeast in wine. So you use you get a batch of wine, you keep the mesh, you put it in a jar or whatever, and then you bring it with you, and that will activate the next batch of wine like that. The first night we ended up getting, I think it was like something like 20 potatoes, raw potatoes, and 300 to 500 sugars. We went in with tobacco, so we were able to sell the tobacco. He who has tobacco in the shoe is a rich man. And we sold tobacco for sugar, and we made a batch of wine that cooked off in 24 hours. I could not believe it. That's the fastest batch of wine or Pruno or Hooch, whatever, that I've ever been a part of. Could it have went longer? Absolutely. We were just junkies. We would trying to get high on anything. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that's what it was. And we got drunk off this wine 24 hours after we put it up. Again, it didn't taste so sweet, but there's plenty of sugar. It could have cooked 1 to 2 more days for sure. But we ran heat on it from the shower. We would take we would take sheets, tear the sheets apart, get a strip of the sheet, tie it on back of the shower, and then let hot water run, because there were showers in there, trickle down the sheet onto the plastic bag, which was holding the wine. And that would then, you put a little heat or warmth on the wine, it makes it blow up quicker. Because of the kicker that we had when we put this potatoes in, potatoes cook fast anyway. I mean, it rocked. That wine had a head on it. I remember the first night in an hour. It was crazy. It's the fastest batch I've ever seen. Anyway, so our existence in Building 63 was to make the best of our time. And let me tell you, we made hammocks. We had hammocks across the cell. We made chairs. We had a full heavy bag to box, to practice boxing. And I'm talking about, think of a big heavy bag. It was all books and blankets. So you take all the reading books. Yeah, a lot of guys got screwed out of reading books, yes. Take all the reading books, you fold them up in blankets, and then we used the plastic cover on a mattress, tore that off, and then put strings around it. And the plastic cover acted as the outside of the heavy bag. And our cell was like a boxing ring and a lounge, because there was hammocks coming across. And these cops used to come by and just go, what the, that's what we did. We got high on pills and drank wine and invented stuff and made stuff and tried to live as comfortable as possible. Down TC and Youngster, and then we're cooking moonshine in their cell. They were in the first cell, first or second, but it doesn't matter. It's right next to the officer station. They were cooking moonshine at night. So that's what kind of time we were doing in Building 63. And of course, we were acting a fool, and this coincides with that. I don't remember how, when, why, what, but we got a piece of metal. Maybe it was from the light, or this is an old building. There's no telling. We got a piece of metal that kind of bent a little bit, and it was the perfect size to fit in the keyhole of the door. The doors were bars with some mesh. I think there was mesh around the bottom half at least, or maybe there was mesh all the way across. I forgot. Some brown bars. So it was a door that opened. It was a gate, it opened up. Matter of fact, I'm trying to think if it was mesh on it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We realized that piece of metal can go, and it slid right in the keyhole perfect. TC, who's now deceased, was a guy that always thought about escape, constantly. He only had 12 years his first bid. He started doing time in Indiana as a kid, and I believe that in the juvenile center or one of the places in Indiana, him and another guy escaped. They took a car and they ran through the gate or something, and that was his claim to fame. He talked about that often, but he was always talking about escaping, even with the 12-year sentence and like half of it done. He used to talk about, hey, Rob, I got a good place to escape. Again, I've talked about it before. I never had rabbit in my blood. Never was able. I never was the guy that wanted to escape or can properly escape, because it takes committing crime. It takes going on a crime spree and never seeing family, friends, all that stuff again. Well, I knew that one of the bros down there had a little experience in being a locksmith. So one of us sent a line. A line is ripped up bed sheets, put a battery on the end, or you put an empty toothpaste holder on the end, crush it down and slide it. I didn't know. I thought I heard somebody knock on the door. I was here. One of my friends supposed to come by. Anyway, slid it. We were, let's say, cell 7, 8, 9 right in there, and we slid it down to 1 or 2 where they were. And sure enough, we sent kites back and forth, and we're like, we want you to make a key. And they sent kites. What are we going to do? I was all about it that time, so I kind of nut up. I'm like, let's escape. Everybody wants to escape. All right, fine. Let's, and was I serious? I probably would have. And then it was like, what are we going to do? We're going to get out of the building. We're going to hold the CO hostage, and we're going to climb up over the fence. We're making bed sheets. We're talking about making bed sheets and a hook, and because it's right next to the wall. Building 63 was closed. The other guys weren't really into it. Some of them only had a couple years. But we had this valuable thing, which was going to be a key. We then talked about it with the bros next door. No one knows Billy, and I still can't remember the other 2 people in there. I can't believe I can't remember who was in there. What? That's so crazy. Anyway, it went from no, let's not escape, to let's pop the doors and start just beating check-ins' asses. This has happened in prior prison riots. You can go back to New Mexico. I believe you can go to Atlanta, where when the prisoners get control of the prison or a cell block, whatever, they usually go after the guys that are in protective custody. It was the same type of idea. And we were just on one. We were all fucked up on, all effed up on pills and alcohol. Don't remember what it was, but we were always messed up. And let me say something real quick. The reason we can always get Narantan and back with him, I had a back problem. At that time, when gabapentin or Narantan, whatever the first one was, came out, there was like 600 milligram pills, and you can get 120, I think, were in a bottle. They said as needed. Well, I needed to take a bottle every 2 days. So I can literally say I'm out every other day and then fill my prescription. Same thing with baclofen. So we had a never-ending supply of pills because of the way that medical was handling it. I don't know what kind of scam that they had going on to be able to do that, but I kept all my medical records, and I have where it just shows page after page after page after page of me getting these pills. Anyway, so my point is that very few nights were we sober in 63. Between buying sugar, whatever, very few nights, okay? That's the truth. Plus me, I had Tylenol 3s coming in 3 times a day. So 6 pills would get me high, whatever. We were going back and forth, and we finally agreed that, okay, we'll come out for, I said, I'll do it. I'll pop the door first. I'll go open your door. I'll go open your doors. And then where are we going to go? We had down the range a guy by the name of Danny. That's what this next video will be about. I think maybe not. No, I want to do the flood. But we had some guys that we were going to target. And right across the cell from us was Sean. Sean was a dirty white boy in an FCI for over 10 years. His points, he committed an assault, I think. His points went up, and he was sent to a USP for his last 13, 14 months in prison. And he did not like being a dirty white boy in a USP. Said that's not what it was about. In the FCI was a dirty white boys were about family, and in the USPs we were just about chaos and just wrecking each other and just whatever. I never been to an FCI. Well, I never been around other dirty white boys. A bunch of them in an FCI, only one at a time. Anyway, we had the key. It was actually successful. It can open these doors. Crazy. You know, when it happened, it was like, oh shoot, like all that thought and talk and planning, this is like real now. And the key was made, it was passed over, saw it, and we're like, oh, okay, all right. Across the way was Sean. Sean saw it, stopped the first officer that came by, told on us, and here they come storming in for a shakedown. I will say this, we managed to get rid of the key, which would have been a whole different thing. But you know what they found? They found a knife that wasn't even ours. I forgot where it was buried. It was like a pick or something, and we all got charged for it. And we were so stupid. One of us could have took the shot and said it was ours. But me, I like to fight DHO. I like to fight the administrative remedy process every time I got a shot. Well, for a while I did. And I had convinced everybody that we didn't need to cop to it because they'd found it and blah, blah, blah. We all got booked. Anyway, that was the story about making a key in building 63. I'm going to go ahead and shut this off, and I'm going to do another building 63 story. And you know what? If I would have got out, I just thought of something. Just let's assume that we would have got out, or I would have got caught with the key. I wouldn't be out here today. There's no way a judge would look at my record and say this guy who had a key for an escape attempt or to beat people up, whatever, or if I actually got through and we actually opened up PC cells or the doors of these guys were in PC and started, never would have got out. So it worked. Worked in my favor, I guess.